Michel. Hello, I'm Mother Rachel. And, just kidding. I'm Vince, and I'm really excited to come talk to you about the Magnificat and a little bit about Mary today, Mary's story. I did talk to Mother Rachel ahead of time about this, and decided that we try letting me say a few words, take over this part of the service during Advent, and Magnificat I was especially excited for because there's just so much there. Former English teacher. Don't worry, it's not going to be boring. As soon as I said English teacher, I saw 12 people's eyes just glaze over.
Hey, English major.
I taught British Lit in San Antonio for about 10, 11, 12 years, something. When people were in literature, you get all kind of uptight. And when I look at the Bible, when I look at Mary's song or anybody, I tend to approach it as literary analysis simply because that's what I was trained to do way back in college. And literature kind of scares people, but literature, and write this down on the test, the technical definition of literature is a really cool way to tell a story. And that's all it is, a really cool way to tell a story, whether it's a play or prose or a novel or whatever. And today we're going to look at Mary's story. I feel like all of us have a story to tell, and we don't tell our stories as much as we used to. But today we're going to look at Mary's story, and it is a really good story. Mary's story was written down by Luke. A little bit about Luke. Luke was a physician, regarded according to Paul and Acts, he was a very good physician, very competent, probably highly sought after. He was also a historian. He of the top notch. He was probably up there with like Herodotus and some of the other really good historians. He was also Greek, and we think he's the only Greek writer of the Gospels. Matthew was definitely Jewish. John definitely Jewish. John Mark probably Jewish. Luke, was Greek, and so he's the only Gentile who's included within the account of the life of Christ. His account. So what he did was sit down with Peter and Mary at different times and interview them. And I can just see right now, for the portion we're going to read, is Peter sitting down in Mary's house. Mary's probably older at this point. She's probably in her 50s, maybe hitting close to 60. That's just a guesstimate. And he said, okay, Mary, I want to figure out, because there's a lot of stuff going around about Jesus, and some of it's not all that great, but because I'm a historian and I'm a pretty educated guy, I'm going to write one that is great. He says this, he actually says, he addresses the gospel to someone named Theophilus. And he says that he's writing that there are many accounts going around, but I'm writing so that you might have an orderly account. If you look at the first four verses of Luke 1. And he writes to Theophilus, and Theophilus means God lover, or friend of God. And I think it's really cool because 2,000 years later, God lovers, friends of God, are still reading the account, it's still addressed to us. So the scene is Luke sitting there. He's probably got these wax tablets. He's taking notes with Mary, telling him the story, and he'd go home later, put them on some papyrus. And she starts in with who she is, or we started looking at who Mary is for a little bit. Look at her song, and I might be a little bit all over the place, but don't worry because I do have an endpoint. We might drive from Temple to San Antonio, but I'm going to take you by way of Houston and Corpus Christi first. So, and don't worry, I'll be an hour tops. Not even that, 45 minutes. Just kidding. Okay, so Mary, young girl, when the angel Gabriel appeared to her, we just heard a little bit about, or at least the after effects of that. She was, I'm going to say she's probably about 15, could have been 14, could have been 16, but she's not what we would consider to be someone of age, although in that time and place she probably was considered to be of age. She's probably out by herself at one day, and maybe she's at home doing the dishes, who knows, but this angel appears to her out of nowhere. And the passage there, right before we get to where we started today, is that God sent an angel, Gabriel, to Nazareth, town of Galilee, to a virgin pledged to be married to a man named Joseph. The virgin's name was Mary. The angel went and said, "Greetings, you are highly favored. The Lord is with you." Now imagine you're sitting there at home, I don't know, doing dishes, sweeping the dirt floor, and suddenly got this angel standing right there in the middle of the place, okay, right in front of you. And it says that she was troubled. I imagine she was. And then Gabriel says to her something, says, very famous in the Bible, one of my favorite passages in the Bible, do not be afraid. Do not be afraid. He says that the Lord is with you. And he goes on to say that you will conceive and give birth to a son, and you're going to call him Jesus, and he'll be called the Son of the Most High. The Lord will give him the throne of his father David, and he'll reign over. And Mary hears that she's going to get pregnant, have a son. The son's going to do really great things, and she's wondering, but I'm a virgin. How's this going to be? I mean, she was probably innocent. She's probably pure. She wasn't done, and she would take two to the tango, and she'd have a dance part at that point. So he says, "Oh, don't worry. God's going to take care of that. God has a way of showing up and taking care of things when we don't think that there is a way to take care of these things." We talked about she was her sister, her kinswoman Elizabeth. Maybe it was her aunt, maybe it was her cousin, mom's cousin. We don't really know for sure, but a kin somehow related to her. And Elizabeth was pregnant when she was too old to be pregnant. You might call it that they were using menopause as birth control. But nonetheless, God is the best fertility treatment around. He's even better than IVF. And she got pregnant miraculously, as God has shown too often that He is able to do. And the two of them got together. Mary goes to visit Elizabeth, and Elizabeth, she says, "I'm going to have a baby, and it's going to be God's baby, and it's going to be awesome." And Elizabeth is like, "I know, it's great." And I can just see them. They're both, they grabbing each other, hugging, excited, conventional, dancing around a little bit of a circle. Like, women do sometimes. They find out they're pregnant, and it's a wanted pregnancy, even if it's unexpected, it's still wanted sometimes. And as they do, they laugh, they cry, they squeal, they call their best friend, they hug people, they run into this bathroom, their husbands are showering, rip the shower curtain and put a stick in his face with a plus sign on and says, "Do you know what this means?" And the husband sometimes will say, "Words I can't repeat in church." In other words, "Oh, and holy were among them." Just saying, I hear that has happened before. Anyway, so they are shouting, they're dancing, they're really excited, and Mary goes into the Magnificat, Mary's song. Okay, so whole time Luke's probably writing furiously, trying to get all this down on his wax tablets. Mary's, he's probably having to try to keep her on track, and he goes into the song. And I have a vision in my head. It says Magnificat Mary. I think she was singing this. I really do. Other than the editorial part saying Mary's song, it doesn't specifically say she was singing, but I really think she was singing. My soul glorifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God, my Savior, for He has been mindful of my humble estate of servant. From now on, all generations will call me blessed, for the Mighty One has done great things for me. Holy is His name, and His mercy extends to those who fear Him from generation to generation. I can just see her outside with Elizabeth, and she's just belting this out. He has performed mighty deeds with His arm. He has scattered those who are proud in their inmost thoughts. He brought down rulers from their thrones, but He lifted up the humble. He has filled the hungry with good things, and He sent the rich away empty. He has helped His servant Israel, remembering to be merciful to Abraham and his descendants as promised, forever as promised. We're going to take a detour right now. We're going to get off the highway. We're going to go down a little country road here, but I know where we're going. Because I want to skip over about 6 chapters in 30 years. We're going to come right back to this, I promise. I know where I'm going. And the situation is, we see when Mary went to visit Elizabeth, sort of the first meeting of Jesus and John the Baptist in utero. The baby leapt for joy inside of her. We can imagine Mary was probably in the earlier stages of pregnancy at this point, maybe. Well, years later, we get John the Baptist and Jesus together again. It's like Mary and Elizabeth, the next generation. And John, as Dan taught last week, was such a really good lesson and a really good sermon. I enjoyed it about John the Baptist. How he went out in the desert. He was preaching, and all the people were coming out to see him. And some of the people thought maybe he's just a few French fries short of a Happy Meal. He was, what he said was crazy, but it's also very much what a lot of people needed to hear. Unfortunately, he started talking about the wrong people and got in trouble because he started talking about King Herod and how Herod was not supposed to marry his brother's wife, and he did, and that got John locked up in the slammer. But Herod was also kind of the dog who caught the car because he couldn't really, when he didn't realize taking into account how much people liked John, so he couldn't do anything with him, but he really couldn't let him go because that would look weak. So John is just sort of sitting there in limbo, at least for now. And so John's servants go out to Jesus. This does tie back to Magnificat. I haven't gone crazy here. John's servants go out to Jesus and ask, to Jesus, John's kind of wondering what's going on. Like he's, just, what's up, dude? What's up? What's going on? Why, he's in jail. Did you hear? Maybe you like walk on water all the way over there and bust him out or something. I don't know. And Jesus tells them to go back and tell John that the many who have diseases are being cured, sickness and evil spirits are being cast out, that the deaf are being heard, or hearing, the blind have sight, the lame walk, those who have leprosy are being cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised. The good news is proclaimed to the poor. Now I want to take that text and imagine in your mind, I don't have a over PowerPoint, or else I put it next to you. That text and the Magnificat side by side. They're not identical, but they're same theme, variations on a theme, and that is God is coming into the world to lift up the oppressed, lift up the marginalized, lift up those who cannot lift up themselves. The good news is being proclaimed. Did you know the word gospel literally means good news? And Mary, in her Magnificat, when she's out there singing and having just proclaiming this, Mary is the first person proclaiming the gospel of Jesus Christ in the New Testament. Mary was the first evangelist. A woman was our first evangelist. The mother of Jesus evangelized the gospel before anyone else did. God went to her first. He went to her to be the vessel through which he would enter the universe and come to make the marginalized, to make it all, to lift them up, to make it all equal. Mary had a choice of that. Gabriel told her that she was going to bear the Christ child. I mean, she could have said no. She could have said, not for me. Because she was innocent. She may be a little naive, but she wasn't stupid because she knew what that entailed. She knew she was going to get pregnant. She knew that she was going to get bigger than a house, and she was going to have to pee all the time, her feet were going to swell, and then she was going to have to be miserably hot in the summer, and then she's going to have trouble going around and getting up out of chairs and go through one of the most arduous processes that most women will undergo. And not only the physical aspects of this, but she knew Nazareth was a small town. You ever been to a small town? Everybody knows everybody's business. And suddenly, there's that one got pregnant. She said, she said, God's her baby daddy, or what? And the rumors, she could have actually been put to death, and yet she said yes. She could have been stoned to death. She could have been cast out. She could have had all these things happen. Knowing this, she said yes, but the choice was still given to her to say yes. Sort of God was going to use her body to bring the child into the world, and she gave consent for that. She said yes. And having said yes to God, she is blessed, and still all generations are still calling her blessed because she went along with what God had given her to do. Now notice God gave the choice, through Gabriel, gave the choice to Mary. He didn't go to Joseph. He didn't go to Mary's father. He didn't want to establish a patriarchy where Joseph and her father would have come together and said, we are from God. God says you're going to get pregnant. This is what it's going to be, Mary. No, she had that choice. And she chose the arduous process of pregnancy. She chose the trial of labor. She chose to have people look at her funny and call her name to make fun of her because, they left Nazareth, went to Bethlehem, went to Egypt for a couple of years, came back to Nazareth. Do you think those people in a small town forgot? No, no. When they got to town, they're like, oh, would you look at that? Look who's back. There's a little child with a little baby. He's grown now, huh? He'll be bigger. I could just see Joseph being at work, carpentering, but actually he's more than a carpenter. The word says his tektrion, which literally means hand worker. So he probably did carpentry, but maybe some stone laying and brick laying and clearing fields, whatever. Mary's at home. Jesus is playing. I can see people coming up and, well, Mary, wow, Jesus is getting big. Doesn't really look a whole lot like you, though. Maybe, do you think that's for Joseph? No, doesn't look like Joseph. Maybe your brother. No, doesn't look like your brother either. Joseph's father? Yeah. Don't think of Mary. I don't think he doesn't really look like anybody in your family. Oh, he's his father. Maybe he looks like God. Okay. In actuality, we see him grow up. He did look like God. He did look like God. But Mary chose to undergo all this. 50 years, or however many years later, she's giving the story to Luke. And I would bet you, if you ever read the Scarlet Letter in Hester Prynne, she still wore that A on her chest, even if it wasn't an A literally sewn onto her chest. She would have always been that person. And now she's the one who got pregnant outside of marriage, and her son grew up to be crazy. Because they say that about Jesus in his hometown that they thought there was something wrong with him when he preaches there. Mary chose to say yes. She chose to say yes to all of this. And this is Mary's story. And just like everybody has a story, I think everybody has a calling. And I think each and every one of you have a calling, like Mary had a calling. Now don't worry, God is not going to call you to give birth to the Christ child, because that boat sailed a long time ago. So you're not going to worry about that calling. But God may be calling one of us today to reconcile with someone we don't want to reconcile with. God may be calling us to be involved with a ministry. We don't think we have what it takes to be involved in that ministry. God may be calling us to step up and be part of lay leadership or take on a ministry team. God may be calling us to be a priest or a deacon. You don't know what Mary, before Gabriel appeared to her, had no idea God was going to call her to this. But she had lived her life in such a way that when God did call her to do this, she had no hesitation or trouble saying yes and going along with this. Mary chose to follow God's will at all costs to her. And sing about it. And I hope that when God reveals a part of our lives where He is calling us to do something, we can go along with that will, that God will, maybe even sing about it. Amen.
Amen. Well, with that, let us stand together and affirm that faith that calls us to follow God. In the words of the Nicene Creed. We believe in one God,